Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kellyanne Boyce and proudly serve as the president of the Chautauqua Women's Club. Thank you. I don't need that, but thank you, thank you. Welcome to our Contemporary Issues Forum, or CIF for short. Our program is held here every Saturday, 3 p.m. through August 22nd. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're one of our many returning friends, thank you for spending your afternoon with us on this glorious day. I'm so happy you're here. Before we begin, I'd like to thank some wonderful people who have made today's program possible. Jake DeGari, our videographer back there. Jake, thank you very much. They're all taking their Saturdays, so it's a big deal. Deb Treffs, I saw you come in. There she is over there. She wrote that wonderful article today in the Daily. Yes, she does wonderful coverage for us, so thank you. Our usher, Jean, she's counting and clicking all the numbers. She counts you as you walk in. Hope DeGari and Chautauqua Membership Committee at the welcome table. Hello. Earl and Margaret from the Chautauqua Bookstore, and there will be a book signing immediately after this lecture today. We are deeply grateful to our generous 2026 program sponsors, our anonymous donor, Chrissy Fulton and George Vector, Lauren Rich Fine of Beatrice Advisors, Susan O'Connor Baird, McGee Women's Research Institute, and Kathy Bonner, Mary Lou Goodman, and Josette Raleigh in loving memory of Rita Arjun Auerbach. Because of your generosity, we're able to bring world-class speakers like Deborah to Chautauqua. Thank you for making today's conversation possible. For 137 years, the Chautauqua Women's Club has brought people together through curiosity, lifelong learning, and community. We exist to inspire and empower women, and yes, the men who love them. In fact, we're proud to have more than 100 men as members, and we're grateful to every one of them. So thank you. This year, we're celebrating a remarkable milestone. With our $40,000 scholarship to the Chautauqua Institution this year, we've now reached more than $2 million over 42 consecutive years. That puts us in a very special place among donors in Chautauqua, and we're very, very proud. Excuse me. Ooh, got all excited. To learn more about our membership and our year-round Chautauqua Academy programs, please visit our website, chautauquawomensclub.org. At the Women's Club, we believe history isn't simply something to remember, it's something to learn from. That's exactly what Deborah Heiligman does so brilliantly. Last week, Dennis Wilder reminded us of how America was founded. Today, Deborah invites us to explore another enduring question. How has America continued to define and debate the meaning of freedom? That's the magic of Chautauqua. Each conversation builds on the last, inviting us to think a little deeper and see history through fresh eyes. Today, we are proud to introduce award-winning author and biographer Deborah Heiligman. Over the course of her remarkable career, Deborah has written 34 books, touching readers across generations by transforming history into compelling, deeply human stories. Her work has earned the nation's highest honors, including the National Book Award, and her newest book, Loudmouth, Emma Goldman versus America, A Love Story, has already been celebrated as one of the year's outstanding books. We're delighted to meet Deborah's lovely husband, Pulitzer Prize winner, Jonathan Weiner. We had a lovely dinner last night, and I have to confess, we already encouraged them to hurry up and finish their next books because we would love nothing more than to welcome you back on the stage, both of you. Before we begin, let me invite you back next Saturday for another inspiring talk. Eunice Lynn Nichols, co-CEO of Cogenerate, will present Better Together, Rebuilding an Age-Integrated Society, exploring how bringing generations together can reduce loneliness, bridge divides, and help solve challenges that no generation can tackle alone. It promises to be another wonderful conversation, and I hope you'll join us. I think I saw Eunice in here. Where are you? Oh, there you are. She's here this week, so we're happy to have you next week. Deborah will speak for approximately 35 to 40 minutes, followed by about 15 minutes of questions. There are 2 microphones, right? Yep, there's the second one. Please keep your questions concise, no Chautauqua prelude, and if you do not want to be recorded, please refrain from asking a question. Also, remember to speak directly into the microphone so everyone can hear. Please join me in giving a warm Chautauqua welcome for Deborah Heiligman. And here's some more rocks.
Some more rocks.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Eunice, I wish I were going to be here next week because I need to hear all about that. And I will say it's refreshing when you give instructions to adults about asking questions, because when I talk to small children, like kindergartners, I always have to say, it's an ask, not a tell. And then usually the first one is, I have a cat. So I think you guys are going to do better than that. So Emma Goldman would have loved this venue. I don't know if you know this, but she loved to speak outside, and she spoke outside a lot. Emma would have maybe not worn a red dress, but I wore it in her honor, reclaiming red for the anarchists. She gave an estimated 10,000 speeches in her life. When she often spoke like in the back of bars or in auditoriums or outside like this. Very often, though, there were policemen, and I say policemen, in the back ready to arrest her. I'm very happy to see there are no policemen here. No, good, okay. They would arrest her for her words. She was thrown into jail many, many times and went to prison for long periods of time. And by the way, for you book lovers out there, she learned to always bring a book with her whenever she gave a speech or went to a meeting, because God forbid she should be arrested and not have anything to read. That's true. It's all true. Okay, so before I go on talking, and there's no right or wrong answer here, I just need to know how many people here knew who Emma Goldman was, and it doesn't count if you looked her up because I was coming to talk. Whoa. Okay, this is a much higher percentage than I usually get, so that's really fun. Last weekend or recently, I was at a children's literature conference talking to librarians and teachers. Couple hundred teachers in the auditorium, 5 people raised their hands. She's not taught. She's not taught because she's basically radical history. She was not a good girl. Someone just said to me that she learned about Emma in college, Brown, where I also went, and she always wanted to be Emma Goldman when she grew up. And I will not say that I always wanted to be Emma Goldman because I didn't know about her till I was 19. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I want to be Emma Goldman now. She was just such a badass. And can I say badass? Okay. But I think she's ignored by history because she's not an easy character. She's complicated. I mean, how many people know that she was a co-conspirator in the attempted assassination of Henry Clay Frick? Yeah, I have some stringers in the back, I think. Who? Did you write a book about Emma Goldman? I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah, so she and her lover, boyfriend, Alexandra Sasha Berkman, tried to murder Frick. They did not succeed. Sasha tried. He did not succeed. He ended up going to prison. But it's a little bit hard to teach somebody who tried to commit a murder. I believe that people maybe don't teach her because she was not a role model. But let me ask you this. How many of our forefathers can we now consider great, uncomplicated role models? Not very many. In fact, Emma Goldman, one of the things that I love about her is what you saw was what you got. As was evidenced by her autobiography that she wrote, which was 1,000 pages. And I'm not saying that she was always truthful in that book, and she did make some mistakes, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but she told all kinds of stories on herself, including that she tried to murder Frick, and also that she tried to be a prostitute, a sex worker for one night, and failed miserably. It's a great read, her book. But during the time that I was working on the book, and I was having doubts about whether I should write it or not. I don't know if you've ever heard any author say that they have doubts when they're writing a book. Constant doubts. I'm married to one. We doubt ourselves and then tell each other it's all going to be okay. But during the course of writing this book, I became friends with a woman named Alex Kate Shulman. Does anybody know that name? She wrote, for women of a certain generation, Memoirs of an Ex-Prom Queen. So Alex is going to turn 94 in August, and she's become a very close friend of mine because we're going to have a lot of small world stuff here. 50 years plus ago, she wrote her first book was a YA biography of Emma Goldman. And so when I posted on Instagram that I was working on Emma Goldman, someone that I knew messaged me and said, would you like to meet Alex Kate Shulman? I was like, do I ever want to meet? And then it took me a year to write to her because I was scared to meet this legend. Well, she's now become a very close friend, and I dedicate the book in part to her. But I said to her, why do people not know who Emma Goldman was? Because a lot of people really don't, especially people of a younger generation. And she said, well, here in the Women's Club I will say this, it's because she was a woman. And there's truth to that. So women really get ignored in history, and so do radicals, and so do people who do not conform the way people think that they should conform. I would argue that Emma Goldman has changed the political discourse in our country, and we can all learn from her all the time. And I think we do learn from her all the time. I think she was the foremother of the 60s activists. I think she was the foremother of second wave feminism. I mean, Alex would definitely agree with that. I will confess that when I started to write about her, I really didn't know anything about her. This is my MO. Do not do this at home, people. I write a proposal, I get a book contract, and anybody can ask me about this later, and then when I get the book contract, I realize, oh, no, I really don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what I'm writing about. And so I have to do research up the kazoo, which I do. And my favorite thing to do is to read primary sources. And so I just immerse myself in primary sources. And with Emma Goldman, I was so lucky because she wrote this 1,000-page autobiography, which I read and took notes, like I call them my oh wow notes. If any of you are teachers and you teach kids, when they're taking notes from, well, I mean, do they take notes anymore? Let's not talk about AI. But I just write down the things that make me go, oh, wow, because those are the things that I know my readers are going to want to know. And I can always look up the facts and the timeline and all of that later. But I was writing down so many oh, wows and exclaiming constantly about this crazy lady, Emma Goldman, who was just incredible. While I'm reading the book, I'm really getting to be inside of her head. Like very much inside of her head. So much so that when she starts making really bad choices about men, which she did, I start yelling at her, going, Emma, don't! You gotta break up with him, you gotta break up with him. She doesn't listen to me. While I was reading the book, something nagged at me about one of her stories. So she grew up in Russia, many counts against her. She was a Jew in Tsarist Russia. She was a girl in a family that wanted boys, a father that wanted boys, and she had a pretty abusive childhood. When she wrote about coming to America, she talked about sailing into New York Harbor. She was with her sister, looking out at the Statue of Liberty with her torch held high. So something about that bothered me. I don't know why. And I looked it up, and guess what? The Statue of Liberty wasn't up yet. So I thought, oh, dear, it's not really what I thought. What am I going to do? And I realized eventually that I could use that in my book. And I will tell you how I use it is to tell my reader that she made that mistake, because that allows my reader to know, to be skeptical about a primary source and a story that I might be telling. Now, I've done a lot of work with primary sources. When I had my book on Vincent van Gogh come out called Vincent and Theo, and we had my book party at a bookstore, my friend Sean, who's a lawyer, raised his hand at the end and said, "You talk a lot about primary sources, but how do you know to trust Vincent van Gogh, Deb?" Good question, Sean. I don't necessarily trust him because he's Vincent van Gogh, and he's writing letters to Theo, his brother, trying to convince Theo to send him more money. So I have to double check and triple check. When I wrote about Charles Darwin in my book, Charles and Emma, I trusted Charles completely because that man was compulsive and anal, and he took very careful records about everything. So I knew to trust him. So you really, really have to know your sources. Even as I did all my research and really got into knowing Emma, I also read her boyfriend, her lover's memoir, which told some of the same stories in the same way and some of the same stories in a different way. So that's also fun because Sasha says one thing and Emma says another thing, and I have to figure out how to tell it. But I have to figure out what my story is when I'm writing it. And I like to write nonfiction that reads like fiction with nothing made up. So there's nothing made up, but it has character development, it has plot, it has suspense. How do I do that? One of the ways I do that is by reading as much as I can to get scenes, reading letters so I have the exact wording, but also very much getting into the character's mind and figuring out what the through line of the story is. I read a lot of books about how to write fiction when I'm writing nonfiction. So there's one book called 7 Plots, which claims that there's only 7 plots. So like for Vincent and Theo, I read that book and I thought it's a quest. And I stuck with that. I think Vincent and Theo is a quest of Vincent trying to win back the love of his family by becoming an artist, and that was his quest. For Emma, I thought maybe it was overcoming the monster, and the monster was capitalism and what was wrong with America. But guess what? She didn't really overcome the monster. She didn't convince America to give up capitalism and the government and become anarchists. So the more I thought about it, the more I thought maybe it's a love story. I love me a love story. Vincent and Theo was a love story. Charles and Emma was a love story. I'm all about connection and people and love stories, and maybe this was a love story. But what was the love story about? Now, if I had slides right about now, I'd be showing you the mess of my desk and the mess of my bulletin board so you could see the inside of my mind, because I walk around a lot going, what's my story? What's my story? Poor John, he hears every night at dinner, I don't know what my story is. So it's a love story. So I tried that on for size. Okay, so one obvious love story for Emma Goldman was all of her lovers. She had so many lovers, and she believed in free love, and she had a couple lovers at the same time. She arguably had a woman lover. She had, like I said, bad taste in men. It didn't quite work for me. Okay, so then I thought, oh, and I also have to say that she had lovers until she was very old. When she was in her 60s, which is my age, she had a 35-year-old blind lover. And the reason she was able to become his lover was because his wife corresponded with her for him. I will never be Emma Goldman. So another really obvious candidate for Emma's love story would be anarchism. So you all know what anarchism is? Maybe yes, maybe no. Anarchism does not mean chaos. Anarchism means without a leader. So she really believed that we would all be better off without a leader. Pregnant pause. I'm not allowed to talk about politics here. I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about Emma Goldman's idea. She did not believe about government from the top down. She believed in her heart, her ideal was that if people were left to their own devices and there was no government, they would take care of each other, they would create rules that would keep people safe, they would help each other in bad times. So for a while there, I really did drink the Kool-Aid, and I became an anarchist for just a few months while I was writing this book. It's not practical. It's not practical, obviously, but what I loved about Emma thinking that way was that I believe she believed the people are really good at heart. And that's a beautiful thing to think, even if it's not practical. So that was a candidate for the love story. Another candidate for the love story would have been Emma and Emma, because Emma was pretty chuffed with herself. She thought she was pretty hot shit. And she would talk about herself in the third person. And she called herself E.G., Emma Goldman, E.G. She'd say, would you like a cup of E.G.'s terrific coffee? Would you like a cup, would you like E.G. to cook for you? So I thought about it a lot. And of course, I was reading another fiction writing book. Joan Silber, who wrote a small book called The Art of Time in Fiction, said, meaning is determined by where a story ends. So I was reading some primary sources. I was reading some oral histories with people who knew Emma. And one of them was a young Italian anarchist. Spoiler alert, Emma got deported by a young J. Edgar Hoover. I think that was in the write-up about this talk, so it's not such a spoiler. And she was in exile for the rest of her life, and she was living in Canada when she was an old lady, and she died there. So she never stopped working for the cause, for anarchism, for anarchists, for helping people. She was always helping people. So this young Italian anarchist was driving her around. She would be giving a lecture, he would drive her around, and she also helped him not get deported from Canada, because he was going to be deported from Canada. So he talked in this oral history about one day when he was driving her around up in Windsor, Ontario. And he was telling her about the history of Underground Railroad and how people had come to Canada. And they were sitting on a bench looking across at America. And he described her as looking across at America as if through the eyes of a lover. And I realized that I had to write the love story of Emma Goldman and America. And I thought of that moment when she told it wrong about the Statue of Liberty. Why did she think that she passed the Statue of Liberty? Because the Statue of Liberty stands for the ideals of America. That, the huddled masses yearning to be free, the liberty and the freedom for all people in America. That's why she thought the Statue of Liberty was there. So I came up with a title. It's always good to come up with a title. I came up with this title, Emma Goldman versus America, a love story. But then I was reading some newspaper articles about Emma and about one of her speeches, which I'm going to read you about in a minute. And this newspaper called her a loudmouth. And I thought, there's my title, Loudmouth, Emma Goldman versus America, a love story. It said it all. So I was walking with my good friend Rebecca Stead, who's also an author, and I told her my title, and she said, Deb, that title is so good, you don't even have to write the book. And I said, oh man, if only I didn't have to write the book. So I thought a lot about where to start it. We think a lot about where to start our books, and you want to grab the reader. I thought about starting with her deportation because it was so dramatic, and it was on a cold winter morning, and she was deported from America. But then I thought, that's starting with a negative, and I want to start with a positive. I want us to see Emma Goldman talking to a crowd. So I'm just going to read you a little bit from chapter 1 so you can see how I start it. So chapter 1 is called Take Bread. Take bread, as in steel bread. America, 1893. Emma Goldman was furious. Looking out at the huge crowd before her, she felt their rage too, the collective anger of 5,000 people vibrating in the summer heat. It was August 21st, 1893, Union Square, New York City, a demonstration. Emma Goldman was about to make a speech. She had led 1,000 of these people on a march uptown through the streets of the East Side to this rally. Emma didn't hate America, she loved it. But after living here for 7 years, she knew her new country wasn't living up to its ideals. She believed in the goals of the founding fathers and the promise of America. In the square stood 2 statues of 2 presidents, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, and a statue of the Marquis de Lafayette. Abraham Lincoln is holding a rolled-up document in his hand, thought to be the Emancipation Proclamation. A stone and bronze fence had been built to protect the statue. The fence was inscribed with words from his second inaugural address, with malice toward none, with charity for all. Emma Goldman cherished what Lincoln embodied, the liberation of enslaved people, freedom and liberty for all people, a good life for all. The all was the problem, the reason she stood ready to speak before this crowd of frustrated, fuming workers. So I don't know if you know this, but in 1893, the country was in a huge depression. So I go on to explain that that's what was going on. And these people in the crowd a lot of them were out of work, some of them were already starving, and the government wasn't doing anything. And even though Emma didn't believe in government, she thought, if there is government, you should be helping the people, and they weren't helping the people. When she wrote about this speech in her autobiography 38 years later, Emma remembered starting with these lines. Men and women, do you not realize that the state is the worst enemy you have? It is a machine that crushes you in order to sustain the ruling class, your masters. You've put your trust in today's political leaders, she told the crowd, but they betray you again and again. You expect them to help you, but don't you see they only care about the rich people? The Fifth Avenue is laid in gold, she pointed out, every mansion a citadel of money and power. This is the Gilded Age. She's in Union Square, right up Fifth Avenue, are all these Gilded Age mansions. This is the land of Thomas Jefferson, John Brown, Abe Lincoln, shouted the loudmouth in bad English, a German language newspaper reported. In this great country, Emma Goldman said, hundreds of thousands are crying out for bread. If those men could witness this meeting, they would blush in shame. You have senators and congressmen who live in luxury while you have nothing to eat, Emma said. Their children live in grand style. Their wives and mistresses wear silk and diamonds. She declared, the rich will go on robbing you, your children, and your children's children, unless you wake up, unless you become daring enough to demand your rights. Well then, And this is what everyone quoted and what got Emma in serious trouble for the first time. Demonstrate before the palaces of the rich, demand work. If they do not give you work, demand bread. If they deny you both, take bread. It is your sacred right. Within a couple of days, the police would catch up to Emma in Philadelphia, and she would be arrested for incitement to riot. The police affidavit would describe her as an evil, disposed, and pernicious person and of turbulent disposition. Emma would not deny that she was stirring things up, but she was doing so for the people of the country for whom she loved. This was not her first arrest, nor would it be her last. By the time of her last arrest in America, Emma Goldman would be one of the most famous troublemakers in the country and in the world. Emma made trouble her whole life, usually on purpose, sometimes not, sometimes not. The first time was on June 27, 1869, the day she was born. So then I go back and tell the story of her childhood and bring you back up to that moment. Emma Goldman made great copy. She was in newspapers all the time, and they called her the fiery little anarchist, the agitating anarchist, the anarchist queen. But that wasn't all she talked about. She was so brilliant and so angry and so insightful that she talked about women's rights, she talked about free speech, she talked about free love, she talked about marriage, which she was not in favor of. Why? Because the man got everything and the woman got nothing. And that was true in that case. She was also talked a bit about patriotism, which she was not in favor of, because she believed that patriotism led to wars. The more you know about her, the more prescient she really was. By the way, Emma didn't make money from her speeches that she gave. She sold some literature at her speeches. She ended up publishing a magazine called Mother Earth, which didn't really make her money either. So she always had odd jobs. She was a nurse and a midwife, which taught her a lot. So she also talked about birth control, as you can imagine. And she got arrested for disseminating birth control and birth control information. She was a cook, because she loved to cook, and she would actually go to a conference or whatever and cook food for money. She was known all over the country, both in positive ways and negative ways. I mean, my dad grew up while she was speaking. I doubt his family revered Emma Goldman. I think they were probably not in that camp. But plenty of people I know who grew up with very lefty Jewish families, they did revere Emma Goldman. I think in a lot of ways she was quintessentially American. I mean, she was an immigrant, she was smart, she was hardworking, and she believed that America could be better than it was. I know I have just a few more things I want to say, and then I'm going to let you guys ask questions. She was complicated. I think that may be another reason she's not taught. She was so sure that women should have equal rights, but she was against the woman's right to vote. Do you know why? 2 reasons. 1, she was against voting because she was against government. But also because she believed that if they focused on the right to vote, they would be missing out on all these other great things that women should be able to do. So she was a feminist, but she was not a suffragist. Complicated. She was really in favor of free love, but boy, was she a jealous lover. I mean, she had bad taste in men, which I believe I mentioned. She fell in love with this guy, Ben Reitman, who was this hobo doctor, and he became her manager. This was late, this is one of her many lovers, and he would be, if he were here right now, thank God, John, you're you, and not Ben Reitman, because he would be like over at the table selling the literature, but scoping out the pretty woman in the audience who he was going to take to bed before Emma was done speaking. Emma did not like that, even though she was, a proponent of free love. There were two things that were problematic for me writing the book. One was that I wish she had been better about Black people in America. She did not really speak out very much against prejudice, against racism. She was, as my daughter-in-law Sarah said when I brought it up at dinner one time, Deb, everybody then was a racist, of course, everybody was. But she tried, and she learned as she got older, but she did not really address the problem of Black people in America, like a lot of people today wish she had. But I would argue that she did her best. The other thing was the violence. She believed in violence for a cause. Again, her cause would have been like killing Henry Clay Frick because he was being so terrible to the workers who were striking. To her, seemed reasonable. Like, let's kill Frick, make him an example, and if you want, you can ask me more about this in the questions, and that will get people to be more supportive of workers. But she did not believe in war. What eventually got her kicked out of America by J. Edgar Hoover was that she was strongly against conscription for World War I. Why did she not believe in war? Well, she didn't believe in countries, she didn't believe in patriotism, but also because she believed war was just old men sending young boys out to die. I can't really argue with her. I'm going to tell you just a few small world stories about writing the book, some inside stories that were just so much fun, and then let you ask questions. First of all, I've already had so many small world stories here at Chautauqua. It is mind-blowing how many people I know in common with other people that I've just met since we got here yesterday? We got here yesterday. It's crazy. So every morning I walk my dog Zuzu in Riverside Park, and Riverside Park on the Upper West Side of New York is filled with so many interesting people. And I can learn whatever I need to learn about pretty much anything by walking my dog in Riverside Park. I highly recommend it. Walk with me anytime. So there was this guy who I talked to not very much, but my dog loved him because he gave her the best treats. He and his son, and they walked separately, but one afternoon I was walking Zuzu and Bob was there, and Bob is Asian looking. I found out later he's half Japanese and half like Eastern European Jewish. And we talked, what do you do, what do you do? I told him what I was doing. I was writing a book about Emma Goldman, and what do you do? He translates Japanese legal documents. Okay, fine, we don't really have a lot to talk about. I mean, we liked each other, but we talked about the dogs, but like work-wise, we didn't really have a lot to talk about. About 8 months later, he sees me in the morning, he says, Deborah, I just found out that I had a great aunt that I didn't know about, and she harbored Emma Goldman in Chicago when Emma Goldman was hiding from the police. I said, what's your last name? He said, Yampolsky. I said, Becky Yampolsky? So remember I just told you about Ben Reitman, the guy who was pick out the women? The first time they slept together, Emma and Ben, was in Becky Yampolsky's apartment. I kid you not. Okay, one more. At the last stage of the book, I think we were already in what they used to call galleys. Everything is electronic now, but it was like it had already been copy edited, it had already been fact checked. We were basically at the last minute. My best friend in the world, non-writer friend in the world, Nancy, was with her husband Keith, and Keith's cousin was visiting. And she texted me and she said, you know, Keith's great uncle was the prosecuting attorney that got Emma Goldman kicked out of America. You can't make this stuff up. So, of course, I was like, I wrote to my editor, I said, Joy, guess what? I really need to add more about Harold A. Content. I don't want him to be such a bad guy because he was my friend Keith's great uncle. So, speaking of Joy, oh no, I'll tell you the two other stories. So I just gave a talk in Virginia, like I said, and in that talk I told those two stories, and then I said also, after the book was already published, I was at a thing in Philadelphia, and this guy came over to me and said, my grandmother made lunch for Emma Goldman. So after the talk in Virginia, this woman came over to me and said, my grandmother lent Emma Goldman $1,000, but they had a falling out because Emma Goldman said it wasn't a loan, it was a gift, and she never paid her back. And I said, that sounds like Emma. So, one more story. During the course of the writing of this book, I switched editors, which is not a great thing, but my first editor was not paying close enough attention to my book, and so I asked for a new editor, and I got this new editor, and while she was reading my manuscript, she kept emailing me about how much she loved Emma Goldman. And this is also kind of unheard of, because usually you send in your manuscript and then you sweat for like 3 months while your editor reads it, and you have no idea if she's going to like it or not. She didn't sign up this book. I didn't know if she was going to like it. I found out later that she had never heard of Emma Goldman, and she wasn't a big history person, but she fell so completely in love with Emma Goldman that she got a tattoo on her arm. It says, it's a fountain pen that says Emma Goldman, and that comes from a scene in my book in which Emma Goldman, all right, one more Emma Goldman story. Emma Goldman was implicated in the assassination of President McKinley. She was not involved, but this guy, Schlogos, who killed McKinley, said that he had gone to a speech that Emma Goldman made, and he was inspired by her, or maybe he didn't say that. It's not entirely clear, but she really had nothing to do with the assassination of McKinley, but at the time, they were looking to pin it on her. So she knew she was going to have to turn herself in, but she wanted to do it on her own terms, and she wanted to make sure that people who were her comrades were protected. So she went to Chicago, where she was going to turn herself in, but she was staying at somebody's house, and the idea was she was going to just pretend to be somebody else, and that night she was going to go turn herself in. But before she could do that, the police had a tip, and they came to her apartment, and the apartment where she was staying, nobody else was home, and she was taking a bath, and this guy starts climbing in the window, a policeman starts climbing in the window, and she gets dressed, puts on a robe, and she says, I don't remember the exact name, but she says, I'm not Emma Goldman, I am a Swedish maid, and she starts putting on this act that she's a Swedish maid, and one of the policemen finds a fountain pen that says Emma Goldman on it. And so she admits that she's Emma Goldman, and they take her in. So my editor, Joy, has a fountain pen on her arm that says, with Emma Goldman's signature on it. Couldn't do better than that. I was going to read you the ending of the book, but no, I shouldn't read the ending. Okay, John is telling me time. The ending is just what I told you it was. It was meaning is determined by where a story ends. So I kill her first, which is how you feel when you write a character's death. And then I do this, I go back in time just a little bit to that scene where she's looking across the water at America as if through the eyes of a lover. So I don't have a powerful ending at this moment, so I'm gonna just say, any questions? Go ahead.
Emma Goldman figured prominently in Adam Hochschild's book, American Midnight, a look at repression after World War I. Do you see similarities between then and our present era? And if so, who would be an Emma Goldman for our times?
I think about that a lot. I was thinking, the second part, I was thinking a lot about who would be an Emma Goldman for our times, because you can't really have somebody who's working in the system, right? I mean, it has to be more somebody who's working outside the system to be really like Emma Goldman. I mean, Greta Thunberg came to mind while I was working on the book. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know, because what Emma would say today, I think, is tear it all down, guys. Tear it all down and let's start over. And I don't think there's anybody who's probably going to do that. Do you have a thought?
No.
Yeah. I mean...
But I do see a lot of similarities between post-World War I America and our present time.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities, and there are a lot of people who are feeling as angry about stuff as Emma was, and a lot of people who are feeling disenfranchised and hurting a lot. And I don't know. I wish we had an Emma. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, thank you, Deb. I look forward to getting to know Emma better after reading your book. My question is, you are somewhat known as a writer for young adults, and there's a lot of, maybe it's appropriate young adult information, especially with Emma. How do you handle writing free love, multiple lovers, for the young adult audience? And then my second part of the question is, what are you working on next?
So I'm asked a lot about sort of why do you write for young adults and what is different about what you do, for young adults and for adults. And a couple of things. One, a little inside thing about the children's book world is if you put 14 and up on a book, you're allowed to do anything. You're basically allowed to write about anything you want to write about, because those kids are, and today probably 12 and up, because the kids are exposed to so much. The reason I write for young adults with books like this is because I feel like it gives me a freedom to tell the story that I want to tell. I really want to tell a story. I don't want to do like a big Adam Hochschild, I can never pronounce his name, but he's great. But he's going to do a big, massive history of a time period or a person and do lots of, the ins and outs. If I wrote this for adults, I don't know that I would have been able to tell the page-turning story that I want to tell. And because I feel like I can get in what I want to get in about anarchism and the different types of anarchism, but I don't have to go deep into the weeds of it. Because guess what? They can look it up if they want to know about it. I want this to be an introduction. And what I found over the years is that adults read my books just as much as kids do. In fact, I get emails from people saying, I read your book, Vincent and Theo, and I really loved it, and I learned so much about Vincent and Van Gogh, and then I found out it was a young adult book, and I'm an old adult. Do you think that's okay that I read it? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But in terms of how you write, it's a bigger problem of, when I read you from the first chapter, I wasn't reading the entire first chapter. I was skipping some things, because some of the things in there are explaining things like the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves, which I wouldn't have to do for this audience, but I'm going to have to do that for you young adult. So I just kind of tuck things in there. I didn't go into great detail about her sex life. Probably the kids would have been fine if I had done it. I don't know if the teachers and librarians would have been so fine if I had done that, but I don't want anybody to get mad at me. I'm not like Emma. I don't like conflict. I don't like people to get mad at me. Yeah, so did I answer that part of the question well enough? Okay, we can talk about that some more. What am I working on now? Well, just because I like to do things that are easy, ha ha ha, I'm writing a book about Margot Frank. Does anybody know who Margot Frank? Yeah. The sister of Anne Frank. So Margot Frank was with Anne every step of the way, and nobody ever talks about her. Nobody ever writes about her, and in fact, there's not that much known about her. So, piece of cake over here. And talking about what the time that we're in right now, reading about the Netherlands in 1930s, early 1940s, a lot like America right now, I gotta say. It is one depressing and scary book to be working on right now. However, I love to hang out with people in their 90s and 100s, and I'm getting to do that. So I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Here's my favorite story of the moment. So my brother-in-law, Eric, told me a couple years ago, my friend Simone's mother knew Margot Frank. I said, what? And he said, yeah, and she lives on 90-something street, and we can just walk over there and you can talk to her. I'm like, holy shit. So we go over and we talk to Ruth Block, and her hearing aids are on the fritz that day, but she's wonderful and charming, and she's telling me all these stories about growing up in Amsterdam at the same time that Margot and Anne were there. She was the same age, a little bit older, I think, than Margot, but knew her, blah, 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 blah. So after I let her tell the whole, like her life story, I say, so Ruth, what do you remember about Margot Frank? And she said, we were in different groups. That's what I got. So, fortunately, I've had slightly more information from other people who knew her, so that's what I'm working on right now. Wish me luck. Thank you. Yes.
First off, thanks for coming here.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. But I want to take off on the gentleman's question a little bit. Obviously, you've got a great knowledge of history. What do you foresee for America, say, and pick a time frame?
You told me I'm not allowed to
I know. Just be gentle.
Just be gentle. I think we're screwed. I'm really scared. I'm really scared. I think that we are in deep trouble, and I think we're in deep trouble. Let me take it back to Emma for a moment. Emma believed that anarchism could work because she believed that people were good at heart. I'm having a little trouble believing that right now. And that's what scares me more than anything else. Anything else. I live in New York City. I'm in a very, very diverse neighborhood, economically diverse, racially diverse, so many things. I love my neighborhood. I feel so at home and happy there. I feel like if all of America were like my neighborhood, we would be okay. It has its problems. There are unhoused people, there's trash, there's economic inequality up the kazoo, but people are friendly, people are respectful, people help each other, people do not think of people as othered, and that is my wish for America. I don't know how we're going to get there. I think the way we can get there, and this is what I thought about after something happened a couple years ago, which I'm not allowed to talk about really, but I think the way we can get there is by being kind and open and gentle and honest and giving and loving with everybody we meet. One by one. I think we can do it one by one. And I will also say, John said I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. Well, you didn't say it. I shouldn't say it for a bad reason, but because I'm not really supposed to be political. But I do believe that we can make more of a difference on the local and state levels than we think. I mean, if you just right, and just a little plug. I belong to a group called SGCC, which is part of the state's projects, and I think the way that we can really make change happen is on the local and state level, and we can get good people in office, people who really care and care about making our country live up to the ideals of the people who founded it. Also, I would say children. I mean, children want to be happy. They want to have friends. They want everybody to be included. They have to be taught, I think, to be mean and to be exclusive. So one other answer to your, well, you didn't ask me why do I write for children? This is why I write for children, and young adults. And I hope adults find my books if they want to read them, but I believe that we can make a difference with children, and I believe that children can make a difference in the world. So that's where I am. Yeah.
That is an amazing spot to end, but I really wanted to bring this back to the earlier question about how did you handle certain topics, and you mentioned Emma's attitude towards violence was one of the things that you struggled with in the story. How did you handle, especially when some young adults are drawn to political violence. How did you think about addressing that topic in Emma's story?
I would be happy to answer that question. I'm being just totally honest with you here about everything, just so you know. So when I was writing, I'll have two stories to tell you about. When I was writing the scene about how Sasha tried to murder Henry Clay Frick, it was a really good scene to write. There's a lot of primary source material. It was very cool. I know he doesn't kill him, but it's very dramatic. You'll see in the book he tries to shoot him and he misses and then he stabs him. And meanwhile, Emma's trying to be a sex worker and bombing at that. And it's like really a writer's dream to be writing that scene. And then I thought, wait a minute, I'm writing about they're trying to commit a murder. This is really not okay. I can't, it's really actually not okay to try to commit a murder. So I reined myself in emotionally, and I still wrote the scene the way I wanted to write it, but I actually say in the book, they were trying to commit a murder. Like, I just put it out there because I didn't want my readers to think it's okay. And you know what, when Luigi, he did his thing, right, it's terrible, I remember his name and not the man he assassinated. So I thought that's what they were trying to do. That's what he was trying to do like that, and I don't want that to be a role model for the kids. When Shlogos used Emma Goldman as an excuse to assassinate McKinley, and he was, the violence was just, really getting to me. I worried about that a lot. And I told you I walk my dog in Riverside Park in the morning. It was kind of like a therapy group. And I became friendly with this woman called Tracy, who happens to be Black. And she said she wants to be a writer too, so she was always asking me questions about my book. She's a film videographer and very smart, and she's trying to write a memoir, so she asked me about my writing process, and I would just talk to her about whatever problem I was having. And I said, I'm really worried that somehow Emma was complicit in this, even though she didn't tell him to kill McKinley. She was advocating violence. And Tracy said, Deb, it was a violent society. It was a violent society. There was the violence against workers, there was violence against Blacks, there was she didn't do it. And so that was helpful, but I still wrote that scene with a lot of care, because I know who I'm writing for, and I don't want to advocate that. By the way, Tracy, we often have sensitivity readers in my world, and so I was so worried about the race thing because I just felt like I wanted to get it right. So I asked Tracy if she would read my manuscript for me. So she would technically be called my Black sensitivity reader, but she called herself my angry Black woman reader. And she was extremely helpful with that, and I changed some things in the book because of her reaction. So that was a great experience. Yes?
I just want to give a boost for your push for being kind and gentle and loving, because the most kind and gentle and loving person who I know is my great-grandfather, who was closely related to Henry Clay Frick. And Sunday dinners in Pennsylvania were often at his house, and so my grandfather's father would bring him into the study, his Frick's library, and have him sit there when he was 4 and 5 and 6 years old,
Wow.
so that he could learn how not to behave. So then afterwards, Sunday night, they would talk about what had happened, what the discussion has been, and how his father would have handled things.
What do you mean he learned how not to behave? I didn't quite get that.
Because there were many people in our family who felt that Henry Clay Frick's behavior was
Bad.
awful.
Got it.
Horrible.
Got it.
So,
Got it.
So
Okay. Yeah.
he was sort of, it made very clear as a little tiny boy
Wow.
that you're not to emulate him. There are other people
Wow.
too, and this is what how you should not
Wow.
behave when you're older.
Wow.
And He was a lovely, lovely man.
Wow, interesting. You know, it's funny because I always give my manuscript to a few people after I've read it. John, I have 2 sons, Aaron and Benjamin, and I asked them to read it for me. And Aaron said, you know, Mom, I looked up Henry Clay Frick, and he wasn't all bad. And you just made him all bad in the book. And he was nice to children. So I stuck in a couple lines about that, because nobody's all bad. Well, all right. Are we done? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you all for showing. She's terrific. We've had a great time. I know she's going to be back in Chautauqua. So thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.